He's working.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for being diehards and staying with us till the end of the day. It's good to have you here. This topic, I think, first takes a little definition of culture, because it can mean different things. Since it's an AI conference, I did what we all did. I asked ChatGPT to define it. And it's, some of it was covered. It's this sort of the shared experiences of a particular group of people: language, religion, arts, music. But of course, that was all experienced together, and cultures were always established through learning. The other thing that I find interesting when you look up the definition is that it is the way people define the way they interact with the world and with each other. And so a change in culture, I think, changes a lot of other things, including do people have a way to interact with the world and with each other? Because they're spending more time on TikTok than almost any other platform, you guys must have a huge role in that. And you're here on the music side, which of course has been part of culture forever. So how do you think about the way culture is being formed and TikTok's role and responsibility in that?
Yeah, thanks, David. I think that TikTok serves as a mirror for what is going on with culture. So these communities or even individuals come up with a new trend, a new song, a new recommendation for a book, a movie, whatever it is. But then it goes into hyperdrive because there's such huge reach on TikTok. So you can reach, well over 1 billion people with that trend. And I think probably the most profound change that I see is I think culture used to be more regional maybe or local than it is now, because a big cultural trend on TikTok has the potential to go global within a very short period of time. You look at how much Latin music or African music is traveling all over the world in very short periods of time and becoming really popular and going to the charts, tops of the charts in all these countries. I think that's what TikTok is doing to culture.
But can culture really work globally? Because I'd like to believe if that were true, then we'd have a lot of unity and harmony in the world. And so I think part of the question is, have we figured out how global culture actually works? And is it really also going to be differentiated by people who have digital access and perhaps also by age?
Yeah, I think it depends which category you're talking about. Again, in music, I do think that culture can become very global. Again, African music, musicians coming out of Nigeria. We have an amazing artist called Tyler coming out of South Africa right now, a song called Water. That song is in the top of the charts in many parts of the world, where 10, 20, 30 years ago, you never would have dreamt of being able to expose an artist from South Africa in Latin America or Southeast Asia or some of these countries. So I think for music it works. I think we talked about sports also being a very global category that brings communities together. I think that can also be very global. Maybe books, maybe film is a little more specific to one part of the world.
Although films are starting to, Netflix is certainly finding great success moving things around. But everybody knows TikTok, everybody uses it. For those who don't know Nielsen, it has a very basic task, which is to measure everything people watch and listen to. So I want to put it in perspective. So we're looking at the total time. Here, the reality is the global population grows 0.1% a year. And in spite of all the technology and all the AI, it has not invented time. So all those people have exactly 24 hours a day, which means it's the competition for media is against a fixed market in reality. And if we look at trends for the last 20 years, it's about 10 hours a day on media. There's been an addition of about 50 minutes in the last decade with digital, because there's more multitasking. There are people who watch movies and watch TikTok at the same time. But you see the shift. And the shift very much, if you look generationally, is more towards streaming, but it's also more towards individuals. Linear tends to be watched collectively. People watched it in groups or in their family. cinema. People went in groups. He mentioned circus tents. These were all communal things. Today, the majority of media for people under the age of 40 is consumed individually, which I think is a real culture problem because people are not relating to each other. It's not actually bringing them together. They're finding their own way. And so it's not creating a common bond the way it was. What's interesting is the two things that are working is sports. So 80% of all sports is viewed in groups still, and music. And so I think what I'm trying to figure out is how to get people to do more things communally, because I don't think you can build a culture of individuals. I think cultures have to have some communal connection, if not physically, which is always best, as we see here, at least virtually.
Yeah. Well, one thing that is interesting to add, I think, as a stat to some of what you gave an overview on is, I think all those stats were consumption stats. The number one statistic that we look at when we think about music on TikTok is what is happening with creations, right? And so I kind of liken this to back in the day, if you were a big fan of a certain artist or song, you made a mixtape of that song, or maybe you learned how to play it on an instrument or something, and that was your way of expressing that you really loved that song and you were a fan of that artist or that song. What people do now is they make a TikTok video, a short form video, and they use that song as the soundtrack to that video. And that really is kind of the ultimate form of fandom and, sort of honoring that artist or song. So that, and I think that does build community, because what you then see happen is a group forms around creating a trend around a certain song, and it can be as simple as a dance move or a lip sync, or it can be something a little deeper where they start rewriting lyrics or analyzing what the lyrics really meant, or whatever else they do with it. But you'll get a group of 100,000 fans from around the world, all paying honor to a song by creating for it. And I think that's actually, it's a digital community, but it's a strong sense of community because they're spending a lot of time on that.
But for folks who are trying to think about the sustainability of a business model, that we've historically worked with studios who make films and TV shows, and we've worked with labels who aggregate and promote and kind of establish that. But what you're describing is a process where the audience is actually involved in the creation and the promotion, which is very different. The power of a studio head or a label seems like it would be quite different in that environment. In fact, there's a lot more power, as in many ways, in the audience itself.
Look, user-generated content is, I think we're still at the very early stages of how important that will continue to be and how it will grow in importance as a category. I thought this a long time ago, when YouTube came along, we called UGC the upload of a premium music video. That wasn't really UGC, that was just a user uploading a video. But now they're actually creating, now they're actually promoting, now they're actually saying, this song deserves to be heard, and I'm gonna be a part of making that happen. So I do think that will, that's a big reshift and resettling for the way the whole industry works. It's actually very powerful because your fans and consumers are also the ones who are promoting and marketing and helping you, push a song out there. But if you're a label head or a studio head, you have to think about it in that way, as opposed to just being solely in charge of doing the marketing and the promotion for a song or for a film, for example.
Yeah, well, and it's, I think we've seen this in print, we've seen this in news. We're just seeing it come to music and to film and to television. But I think the whole models are changing fundamentally. And then, of course, we get to the use of data in that. Before Nielsen, I ran Watson, so all the discussion we've had about AI, I hope people are also hearing the importance of data, because I think that without accurate data, the models hallucinate. And if we talk of something like creators, in order to protect their intellectual property, there needs to be some truth set that we know this was actually produced by that person. And we know that and quite honestly, to help people discover it, we know that it needs to be there. And the data skills are so important, and it's not where creators usually are. Creators are wanting to create. So what help do they need to protect themselves, to protect their data, to protect their intellectual property in this new world? Because they used to have agents who did that for them. They used to have, in this world where you're actually engaging, I think protecting the data, I think, is so important to protecting the value of an artist.
Yeah. I think the digital platforms like TikTok, we've got very sophisticated systems that can scan and match all the copyrights. And so when a song is used as an upload, we identify who the publisher is, we identify who did the original recorded version of that song, and we can do the attribution off the back of those things. Now, you do have some new challenges, like there's a huge trend to mash songs together, to speed songs up, to slow songs down. I'm kind of obsessed with this one trend right now. I think because of the YouTube performance in the Sphere, this one remix by, I think he's an Italian DJ, and he does With or Without You, the U2 song. It's incredible remix, and the visuals is kind of like this Sphere-like background, and it's a beautiful, haunting version of the song, incredible visuals. I have to ask our team whether we're always catching that one, because it's so remixed that it's a little harder for our system to pick that up perfectly. But I think that technology gets better and better every day. And obviously it's kind of the basis for us to continue to be able to pay artists fairly. So everyone's really focused on that. I think we're gonna continue to be good at figuring that out.
Well, I think we have to stay on it. Our Grayson business, which actually does automated content recognition, is chasing the same thing.
Yeah.
I think what's important is to give the artists some easy tools to identify themselves. As you know, there are many, many contributors to a piece of work. And I think having easy ways for people to register themselves so that if it is remixed and it is changed, you can still get back to the origin.
Yeah. I'm actually curious, when you talk about Grace Note, going back to what we talked about earlier in terms of the evolution of culture, are there insights from what you see in terms of the data that is appearing in Grace Note, or the way the data is being used, that give you insights into where musical culture or other forms of culture are going, or how they're evolving?
So it's, for people to, you all know Grace Note from your car, because Grace Note can recognize a piece of work, and if it's playing on the radio, either streaming or broadcast, it'll show up on the screen in your car. So we feed that for most of the engines and for a lot of platforms. So you do see where it's going. I would say what we are, and we do that through very basic machine learning that can identify those tracks. The amount of derivative works, the amount of individual consumers actually creating something new on music is changing. And I think what's tricky is there's actually no definition of a song. There's an audio, there's lyrics, and there's and then these things are all put together separately, and we're just finding these mashups, which are actually people are preferring, because people are actually able to tune the music to something that they like, or something they co-create with. So I would just say you're getting a lot more versions. You're getting a lot more derivative from the truth, which is why I'm trying to make sure we at least stay true to where was the origin, so that the derivative doesn't become the value, and you're not valuing the people who really did the hard work to create the basics. Yeah. But you're certainly seeing that happen.
Yeah. I'll throw another one at you on the back of that. So what does AI and the proliferation of the use of AI in potentially music or other content creation do to what you're talking about right now?
Well, on the creation side, of course, you can create fakes. You can, and they won't call them fakes. They'll be derivative. You can have things that sound right. So I I think really defining what IP is before you train a model, I think is super important. What I also see right now is there aren't enough standards to train the models well. Music is hard. And I think making sure that, in every field where you're building models, you actually want professionals to train the models, or you will end up with a lot of hallucination. And music's in the heart of the beholder, but I think there's a lot of music being quickly made that, isn't built on enough foundation. And so the more we can get musicians actually involved with training, I think the better off we're going to be on the production side. On the discovery side and building an audience, I think is going to change fundamentally. And AI is being used, to help people finding music. I think it's also being used to promote music. Some are going to be better at it than others, but you're going to definitely find AI driving things up the charts.
Yeah, good.
So where do you see the world 5 years from now?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go off the back of the comment around discoverability. So one of the things that we're really focused on at TikTok is delivering this custom feed to everyone, right? Every one of the billion-plus users gets a different For You feed, and that's what makes it such a powerful discovery engine, because we're gonna give you the 10 songs that you might love. I'm gonna get the 10 songs that I might love. No other promotion platform, like if you think about radio, for example, they were reaching an audience of hundreds of thousands of people, but they had to cater to all of them at once. They couldn't do it in individual
But if I go back to the beginning, right, this is the dilemma. If you're gonna get better at personalizing, are you gonna lose the culture of a shared experience?
Yeah, well, but what ends up, no, we've thought about this. What ends up happening though is a billion people, they're all getting an individual feed, but then groups form because hundreds of thousands or millions are all liking or loving or sharing or creating based on the same song, based on the same trend. And so even though it starts with all these individual feeds, these clusters build because there are these common interests. So I think you still get those communities even though the starting point is that individual feed.
Well, listen, I think those of us who really want to strengthen the global culture for humanity, the more we can drive people to things they agree on, the better. People are finding lots of things to disagree on, but I'm with you. It gives me hope if we could actually find the way to build communities based on shared interests. Yeah. Is it just music, or is it books and...
Yeah, books is worth talking about. There's a trend called Book Talk that is happening. We've had over 200 billion views on that hashtag, and there are hundreds of authors around the world who've had really successful book releases because these TikTok communities have come around and recommended that book. There's a book called Red, Blue, and Elegant White, or so. I'm sorry if I got that title wrong. I think 2 billion hashtag views, and it sold several 100,000 copies off the back of that. And this was an unknown author prior to this happening on TikTok. So it does translate to other categories.
Glad to hear it. We're getting the evil eye.
All right.
In a very polite way, thank you. Right. I promised myself when I got to 0, we would get off. So thank you all.
Thank you.